You may have heard of the real-life Hawkeye man cave known as Kinnick Under the Kitchen. Well, after lots of hard work, there's not much space left to paint, but the walls are exploding out for public consumption. Under the Kitchen is proud to announce that you can now purchase exclusive prints of some of your favorite Hawkeye legends, including wrestling great Spencer Lee, football players Tyler Goodson, Riley Moss, and Drew Tate, plus an all-in-one Murray family legacy print featuring Keegan, Chris, and Kenyon Murray himself. Signed and unsigned prints are available, making the perfect collectible or gift for any Hawkeye enthusiast. For more information on purchasing one of these outstanding Hawkeye prints, visit Under the Kitchen on Facebook. That's Under the Kitchen on Facebook. Appreciate Randy Engel and Under the Kitchen for sponsoring this edition of Hawkeye Hangout, and appreciate all of you for being here on this Monday. Let me get my camera a little bit straighter. There we go. What a weekend it was. Big time weekend for Iowa football. We'll get to all that in a little bit, but first of all, thank you again. I want to make sure that I shout out to everybody who's on here, 30 people so far. Please, as a reminder, before we get going, and we're going to talk Iowa recruiting, we're going to talk about everybody who was on campus that I'm aware of that was reported this past weekend. Before we do that, though, please share this show on social media. It does help, all right? It does help if you share the show out on social media. It does also help if you hit the like button. So if you're not into social media besides YouTube, please at least hit that like button, the thumbs up button. If you don't have a YouTube channel, I don't believe you can do that. So you may want to think about doing that next time. Commenting on the show, interacting in our live chat is awesome as well. So thank you to everyone for being here and helping this show happen. You can follow me on social media at From the Hawkeye. If I can find my banner here. Not seeing it. At From the Hawkeye. At From the Hawkeye on Twitter. I know it's here somewhere. I'll find it eventually. But you can also find the podcast if you want to listen to this show, as well as our bi-weekly. Right now, it's during the off-season, bi-weekly edition of Brada's Branded Thoughts, bi-weekly podcast. Follow it on Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you listen to your podcasts. We are on there every week. And we also post our live shows with the voice of college football, Mark Rogers, on that platform as well. Every platform basically out there. If there's a platform that you're into, that you like listening to podcasts or your music through, and we're not on that platform, just let me know in the chat and we'll make that happen. Again, want to thank our sponsor for this first segment of the show. That's Under the Kitchen. Randy Engel doing tremendous work down in Mitchellville, and great gift ideas, folks, especially as we get closer and closer to football season. People are going to get back in that mode. I'm already back in the mode. And how could you not be with the laundry list of recruits that were on campus this past weekend? If you're new to the show, my name is Corey. Appreciate you being here. Again, please tell your friends. If you don't have social media, at least tell your friends about what we're doing here. We are live with Mark Rogers, the voice of college football, every Tuesday over at the Iowa at the Voice of College Football channel. So it's a different channel. Mark does a tremendous job on the Iowa football front, but he does content for football, college football across the country. Okay. He's just tremendous. So if you haven't checked out that channel, be sure to check out Iowa at the Voice of College Football on YouTube. All right. Last thing before we dive into substance, I'm going to open the call line. All right. This is the first call-in show we've done for a while, the last edition of Hawkeye Hangout. And typically I do a couple of these shows every month where we get you involved in the chat. We get the call line open as well. Typically, we have the call line open during Hawkeye Hangout. Last time we had a show was with Tony Rassiopi. We wanted to make sure we kept focused. Tony was a little bit strapped for time. We wanted to keep him to about an hour. He gave us about an hour and 20 minutes. If you missed that show, definitely go back and watch it, because Tony Rassiopi, private instructor for Spencer Petrus, and Art Sitkowski, and obviously Kenny Pickett, who's possibly a star in the making at the NFL level with the Steelers. Tony Rassiopi, certainly an interesting individual, but the line is open this evening. So let me throw the number up for everybody. If you're new to the show, 515-635-1601, 515-635-1601, and you are welcome to call at any point in the show. All right, let's get to the chat before anything else. Erica, good to see you here. I see Spark CW is here as well. Trey is here. Thank you, Trey. Culbertson Clan wanting good news this evening. And believe you me, folks, we're going to get more good news this week. I'm just telling you that right now without even running through the commitments thus far. We are going to get good news this evening. And as I'm saying this, for all you Iowa basketball fans, I'm seeing Jon Rothstein just released matchups for the 2022 Gavitt Games, which is essentially the Big Ten Big East Challenge in college basketball. So if you're interested, I'll tell you, Iowa at Seton Hall is the matchup. So Iowa going on the road. They played Seton Hall several years back in Carver, a game Iowa, I believe, lost. But that is breaking news. According to college basketball insider Jon Rothstein, it will be Iowa and Seton Hall. So the college basketball landscape, the schedule shaping up nicely. Joe, good to see you here, Joe Welsh. I see Chris Davis. We are here, Chris. Hopefully you're getting the stream on your end. Chad is here as well, and absolutely bullies of the Big Ten. I actually used that term earlier in the weekend, Chad, because of what Iowa's doing right now from a recruiting standpoint and from an evaluation standpoint. I really like where Iowa's headed, where their minds are right now at the offensive line spot. And I think maybe we're underestimating the power of George Barnett. We can talk about that as well. Gary, thank you for liking the video. Cole is here. I know he's a Husker fan, but thank you, Cole. Drill MVP. Yes, please hit the like button if you have not already done so. Yes, Mike, thank you very much. Hawkeye Howard is here as well. Hope you're staying safe on the road, Hawkeye Howard. And is here ZJ Wags. It's a good question to start things off. Are some of these higher level O-line recruits a Tristan Wirfs and Linderbaum effect with being first round picks? I certainly don't think it hurts ZJ, right? I will say this, though. Iowa fans are not immune to high draft picks, especially along that offensive line. I think of Brian Bulaga, Brandon Scherf, Robert Gallery. I mean, the list goes on and on and on throughout the Kirk Ferentz era. As we know, Kirk Ferentz, an offensive line guru, has done a really good job, regardless of who his position coach has been, at developing offensive linemen. And so I would like to think that primarily the reason, I shouldn't say primarily, but a portion of the reason why Iowa's having a little bit more success now might be because of George Barnett. But I think we need to provide a little disclaimer there on that as well. Let's remember that Iowa did very, very well in the 21 class. Am I getting that correct? 21 class, yes, on the offensive line. David Davidkov, Jennings Dunker, Connor Colby played as a freshman, Michael Mislinski. And I'd have to go back, but that was primarily Tim Polasek and Kirk Ferentz. So, just like we've been critical, I've been critical of Kirk for several things that have continued throughout his tenure. The offense, primarily just productivity for this offense and lack thereof. I went on the record and said, look, I mean, the one common denominator here, it's not the offensive coordinator. Everybody wants to blame Brian Ferentz, although I think he deserves some blame, right? Everybody deserves some blame if you're a part of this, just like the quarterback deserves a degree of blame. But the one common denominator for the last 23 years has been Kirk Ferentz. And so he should take some responsibility. I think he has. I don't have any reason to think he hasn't. But I think you've got to give him credit as well, ZJ. He has been the common denominator throughout his entire tenure, producing offensive linemen. And so now the boost in recruiting, I think you have to give him some credit here because we've seen a couple different position coaches involved in Tim Polasek and George Barnett over the last few years, and Iowa's come up with some nice classes. Now, if you land Kadyn Proctor, we're talking a whole different level of notoriety and recognition nationally that will be a national story. Regardless of where he goes, it's going to be a national story because he's top 5 by some metrics, definitely top 10 by every metric I've ever seen, every site, recruiting ranking site out there. So certainly it helps to produce guys to the next to the league. And when you have high first-round draft picks, I think about what happened with Iowa basketball this past week, the difference between Keegan Murray going top 4 and top 10. I think there's a significant difference there just from a national perception standpoint. So I think it helps. CJ says, you see Iowa's playing Northern Iowa again, was kind of hoping with the so-called alliance, it would mean we could see Iowa, Oregon or something. And I don't really know what is this alliance? I mean, I understand what it is, but I don't really understand. I don't really see the effects of it yet, CJ. And certainly we don't know what the Big Ten Conference is doing right now with divisions. We know that's in the works. And certainly that has a large impact on scheduling. Will we get eight conference games and 4 non-con, or 9 and 3 like the current format is situated? And certainly that plays a factor. But yeah, I mean, who's going to get hyped up for Northern Iowa? And I don't have any problem with Iowa playing UNI, but when we get this announcement 4 years in advance, I have a hard time getting real hyped about the game as well. Springtime 0502 says he'll be calling in. Alex, do so. Line is open, 515-635-1601. Vernon is here as well. And that's true. Vernon's great point here. Offensive line development can be certainly mask some shortcomings from the quarterback position. Certainly you have a run game. You look at what Wisconsin has done over the course of how many years with strong offensive lines. They've managed to overcome, at times, mediocre quarterback play. Now, they've had their good ones. I thought Jack Cohn was pretty good until he left. Graham Mertz has certainly been underwhelming despite their recruiting hype there. But you're right. If Iowa can get that run game going, certainly you got to get – I mean, the offensive line, for the record, did not look good at spring practice from what I've heard, the tape I've seen. I was not there in person. I was recovering from shoulder surgery, was not able to attend in person. But everything I saw, the offensive line looked very underwhelming. Now, you can perceive that a couple different ways. Is that the defensive line dominating because they're that good? Or is just the offensive line not really performing up to par? They certainly weren't great last year. We saw that from basically game 1 to game 13, although game 14. I thought they got better against Kentucky, albeit against a depleted Kentucky team. And speaking of Kentucky, I believe we have the one and only Drill MVP on the line. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
It is Drill MVP. How you doing, Corey?
I figured as much. I'm doing great, Drill MVP. How are you?
I'm doing good. So one of the things I would like to ask you about your recruiting class is I noticed the top 4 players currently are either athletes or offensive players. And with offense obviously being a key weakness, does this kind of is an encouraging sign that the Iowa coaching staff understands offense needs to be addressed?
Well, skill position talent is my concern, Drill MVP. I do think I've said that you've listened to my show long enough to know that I think Iowa has good personnel along that offensive line. And I say that primarily because of that 21 class, specifically Colby, David Cove, Dunker. Those guys are I think those guys give you a good boost at that position, whether we're talking interior or exterior or outside. You've got Connor Colby right now who's playing guard. I think he could end up playing tackle. I know that it seems like Iowa wants him inside. And Mason Richmond is a guy who's really talented and young. But I think they're okay personnel-wise. I think that the biggest boost that I have seen is from a skill position talent standpoint, specifically at running back. What Iowa's done these last 2 cycles with Kendrick Raphael committed for the 23 class. And then you've got Caleb Johnson from Ohio coming in this year, along with Jazian Patterson. All 3 of those guys at one time were 4-star recruits. 2 of the 3 are, as of right now, are considered 4-star recruits. And Jazian Patterson had a rough year at Deerfield Beach, had a coaching change there, as my understanding, kind of deflated his rankings. And then quarterback. Obviously, you probably saw our interview with Marco Lainez. I'm very high on Marco. So I think it's those 2 positions. They still need to grab a tight end. They had a couple on campus this past weekend. But offensive line, Iowa grabbing a bunch of offensive linemen is not going to move the needle significantly for me, just from a collective offensive standpoint. But if you can pair that with, better than normal skill position talent, because Iowa's not done a great job developing skill position players other than tight ends over the years, that's what would move the needle for me.
Okay. And how much do you buy into these early recruiting rankings? Because I know there's some people that buy a ton into it, some that buy none into it at all. So how much do you buy into the early recruiting?
I don't buy into it at all for 24.
Oh, what about 23?
I think we're starting to get to that point. I mean, when you have 12, 13, 14 guys in your class, I think you can start getting excited if you're still in the top 15 to 20. With that being said, there are, as you know, a number of highly recruited, highly ranked guys right now, Kadyn Proctor being just one of them, that could wait a while. I don't think Proctor will, although we don't know that for certain. But those guys are going to move the needle for a lot of these teams, and certainly going to change the rankings. So I'm very happy with where I was at right now in 23. I wasn't sure I was going to say that 2 months ago, but what they've done, I mentioned Raphael. I really like Trevor Lauk, who just committed yesterday. I'm happy with where they're at, and I don't know where they're at. I don't know if I think Rivals has got them right now top 20, I believe 17th last I saw, or maybe that was 247.
I'm on 24/7. That's what I use.
Okay, and I believe that might be the where are they ranked in 247 rankings?
17.
Okay, so I don't know where they're at with Rivals, but I think that's a good sign. Certainly, there's time left, and Iowa's got to. They've got to win some of these battles still. Again, tight end's a priority. Certainly Proctor's number one right now, but Iowa's done well, as you mentioned. They've done well at the offensive tackle spot anyways with Lauk, and then they got the project kid from Illinois. And they did well this past year at tackle with Cale Crow and Dotzler. So, I think Iowa fans should be positive. That's why I'm on here talking about recruiting, because I think there's momentum right now.
Yeah, they're fifth in the Big Ten, by the way. So kind of within the Big Ten. Now, there's some good teams behind them, but there's some really bad teams in front of them that I think they're going to fall back. So,
and let's remember, Drill MVP, I'm not assuming Proctor. I mean, I for the record, I believe that Proctor is a Hawkeye. I could get that one wrong. Yeah, I mean, who knows? But if he commits, I don't know what it'll do for the rankings, but I would think
it'll move them up significantly, I feel like. Most
correct.
Teams in front of them have at least one 1-star. One 5-star, excuse me. So it's going to help. But yeah. I think he will commit to Iowa. I hope he does. I really hope he does. So I will be pulling for him in that recruiting battle. And the final thing I'll ask you about, Cordy, is 24/7 also updated their bowl game projections. Have you seen that?
No, I'll tell you what, I'll just admit this right off the bat, and I love getting into early projections. I have a hard time getting into early bowl projections when we haven't even played a game yet. But go ahead and tell me.
This matchup will be what is it? A movable object. You know how they have that immovable object thing, conundrum?
A movable object thing. What are you talking about?
Yeah. There's some old conundrum. What if you have an unstoppable force hitting an unmovable object? Well, who wins?
Sure, okay.
That would be this bowl game, because it's Ole Miss versus Iowa.
Okay.
So you would have an unbelievable offense versus an unbelievable defense. And I think that would be a very intriguing matchup.
And what bowl game is that? Outback?
Music City.
Okay. A lot of Iowa fans would like to go to Nashville. I don't know that I don't know from a bowl positioning standpoint that's where you want to go, but I think from a travel standpoint, I know a lot of Iowa fans. I've heard from a lot of Iowa fans that would like to go to Nashville, and they had an opportunity a couple years ago, and as you remember, that game against Missouri got canceled.
Yeah, I was going to go to that game. It was unfortunate.
Are you near Nashville?
No, but it's not that far of a drive. So I usually try to hit it up every year. I was there last year with Tennessee Purdue. Let me tell you, those Tennessee fans.
And yeah, well, that was a heck of a game. Let's remember too, prior to that game being canceled, the bomb that went off in downtown Nashville. You probably remember that. That was just weeks, I believe, before the game was scheduled to be played.
Yeah, that was frightening, to say the least. And I'm glad everybody was okay. I believe everybody was okay from that.
Yes, I don't believe anybody died, and I don't believe there was any significant injuries.
So that's good, but that's all I got for you, Corey. Good luck in the Big Ten, and hopefully you'll be able to get back up to the top 2 like you were last year.
Let's do it. Appreciate the call, Jeron MVP. Call us back.
No problem. Will do.
Appreciate the call from Drill MVP, and want to let everybody know this. We just got this in just moments ago via Twitter. We've typed this into our banner so everybody's aware. At 12 p.m., and I'm confirming whether this is Central or Eastern time. So I believe this is Eastern time, but I'm not 100% certain. So I'm just going to put tomorrow at noon. Jeron Tibbs. So Jeron Tibbs is a 3-star wide receiver out of the Indianapolis area. He has just announced via social media that he will be announcing his commitment tomorrow at noon. Now, whether or not that's Eastern or Central time, I don't know. I'd love to be able to tell you. I would say it's a good sign if you're an Iowa fan, but just because he's fresh off a visit doesn't mean he'll necessarily commit to Iowa. Have no insight on his recruitment. I can tell you this. Let me pull up his recruiting info for anybody who's curious, and I'll go ahead and share my screen so everybody can see. And I'm like Drill MVP. I try to look at 247 and Rivals and kind of compare the two sites. See if I can get my screen shared here for you. All right, Jeron Tibbs. So Tibbs, as you can see, a 6'4", 193-pound wide receiver out of Indianapolis Cathedral. And as you can see, their future cast, they don't have a future cast loaded for the Rivals team, but their fan future cast, Iowa fans, I guess, think that he's coming to Iowa. You see the list of offers, a lot of I shouldn't say mid-majors, but group of 5 FCS schools, but you see some Power 5 schools mixed in here, Purdue being one, Iowa being another. Certainly you can steal him from Purdue. That's a positive. He was just at Purdue a couple of weeks ago. We know Iowa has lost out to Purdue on some wide receivers, David Bell being one major one. Iowa was high on David Bell. For anybody that doesn't know that, they were high on David Bell. He ended up going to Purdue. We know he was sensational. Iowa more recently has lost recruiting battles. I shouldn't say recruiting battles, but transfer portal players, specifically Charlie Jones, a wide receiver, Tyrone Tracy at wide receiver. And so Tibbs will announce tomorrow at noon. And I should know this, whether or not Indiana is East Coast time or Central time. I can find that out here. I'm sure somebody will tell me in the chat. Indianapolis is Eastern. Okay, Indianapolis is Eastern. So my guess is that that's noon Eastern tomorrow. And I hope I'm not giving you faulty information, but according to Jeron Tibbs on Twitter, he will be announcing tomorrow at noon Eastern time. So good information to know there. Call line is back open, by the way, 515-635-1601, 515-635-1601. So the recruiting weekend that we launched this show in response to, and I was going to make a list of this and actually share it on my screen, and the list is so long that I figured I would just kind of rattle through this and then answer questions, answer calls. We know the biggest storyline is Kadyn Proctor. Certainly everybody's following Proctor's decision. You know, will that come soon? I happen to think it will. I have nothing besides just a hunch. The people that I've talked to that are in the know, more in the know than I am, have said that the visit went well. This past weekend, we know Kadyn Proctor standing at 6'7", about 330 pounds. I believe one of the two major sites has Kadyn Proctor listed at 6'8", 335. So he's a mammoth of a man. We know he's a 5-star kid. All these kids are 23, by the way. Trevor Lau committed to Iowa yesterday at 6'6", 287. 4-star kid, offensive tackle. Kenneth Merriweather, defensive end. Heard his visit went well too. He's listed at 6'3", 235. He's a 3-star defensive end out of Detroit. Asa Newsom, an Iowa kid, linebacker, listed as an athlete on some sites. He's listed at 6'4", 205, a 3-star athlete. He's also on campus. Logan Howland, teammate of Marco Lainez. He was on campus, listed at 6'7", 280. He's a 3-star offensive tackle. Kendrick Gilbert, he is a 6'5", 270-pound defensive end. He's a 3-star kid. He was on campus. Chris Tarek, another tackle at 6'6", 295, was there. Safety Khalil Tate, a 6'1", 185-pound safety. was on campus. Zach Ortworth, a tight end, 6'5", 220-pound tight end, a 3-star tight end. Iowa could use a tight end. They've missed out on a couple guys, Mac Markway being probably the biggest name. Jeron Tibbs, we mentioned, he'll be announcing tomorrow at noon Eastern. Trevor Brewer, a defensive tackle at 6'4", 265, was on campus. Another tight end, George Burheim, I believe I'm pronouncing his name correctly, 6'5", 215, a 3-star. And then Jordan Allen, a 6'4", 240-pound defensive end, a 3-star recruit. All those guys were on campus. That information, according to Rivals database, and that's what I can tell you. If I'm missing a name in there, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 guys. I may have missed somebody in there. If I did and you know about them, please let me know. I'd be happy to add them to the list. We do have a call here at Hawkeye Hangout. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
This is Alex from Cedar Rapids.
Alex, how are you doing, buddy?
Good. Doing pretty good. How about yourself, sir?
I'm doing good, man. This is an exciting time. I mean, usually you're not, obviously this is a heavy recruiting period every year, but with the momentum and Iowa's opportunity to land a 5-star kid, I think Hawkeye Nation is buzzing. I feel the same way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of with everybody. I think Kadyn's, with you, I think Kadyn's going to be a Hawkeye. I found it funny that I listen to a lot of other, like 24/7, like Bud Elliott and all Cover 3 podcasts and all those, and they're, going on live with like a 4-star commit to Miami and Alabama. I'm kind of curious if Kadyn Proctor commits to Iowa, if they make a peep about it, because it's, Iowa.
That's a good question. You say that. Ask the question again. You were talking about like these custom edits, or what? I missed the first part of your question.
So I listened to the 24/7 Sports and Bud Elliott and the Cover 3 podcast.
Okay.
So, and like every time, like, when Archie Manning committed to Texas, and they had another guy, a 4-star, I think, committed to Miami or Florida State, they went live on, breaking news kind of thing, went live and talked about it. It's when Xavier Wampa committed to Iowa, no one, I didn't hear a word out of any of those guys, because there seems like to be an Iowa bias. It's like, we get a good player, it's kind of like
Yeah, I mean, I feel you. You got to recognize too, though, that Arch Manning is, given his last name and given the position he plays. And I believe the kid you're referring to with Miami is also a quarterback. Are you referring to the kid that committed, I believe, yesterday?
I think so. I thought he was defensive, but I could be wrong on that.
Well, they landed a quarterback this week. They've landed Miami's buzzing right now. They're recruiting. Talk about making a comeback. Miami seems to be doing well on the recruiting trail. Cristobal coming up with the goods when he needs them. But yeah, you're right. There might be some bias, but part of that is maybe there's some bias against Iowa, but I think there's also bias for the Blue Bloods, right? I mean, we're talking Texas and Miami here, right? No, Kadyn Proctor, when and if he commits to Iowa, it will be a national story. It'll be a national story if he commits to Alabama. I've seen some people on social media basically saying that, he's got a much better chance at making his name known at Iowa. I don't really believe that. I think he's probably, I haven't looked at the national recruiting rankings real closely as of late, but I can tell you he's probably 1 or 2 on Alabama's board right now. Probably 1. So if he commits to Alabama, it's a national story. If he commits to Iowa, it's a national story. I don't think it'll be as big of a story as Arch Manning. But again, I think that's given the position.
No, but Corey, there is a reason, ulterior motive why I called. I actually have a bone to pick with you, sir.
Uh-oh.
So I've been listening every Tuesday with.
You're not the only one.
Well, I've been listening to every Tuesday with you and Mark, and then the opponents that Iowa face, and I think it's pretty awesome that we get to see it, a couple months early, and then obviously we'll see it in the middle of the season. But when you had on Michigan, I can't think of the guy's name.
Steve Dace.
Yes. He made a comment, and you didn't call him out for this, but he made a comment at the very beginning of the show that I caught, that he stated that no one on Iowa's roster would start at Michigan. Now, I believe, I believe for the most part that is true. That I believe that most of Iowa's roster, yes. But you're telling me like Jack Campbell, Xavier Wampa, Riley Moss, any of the linebackers would not start at Michigan.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think any of the offensive players. Maybe Keegan or Keegan Johnson could, maybe be a 2 or 3 wide receiver. But you're going to tell me that none of those defensive players on Iowa's roster would start at Michigan?
Okay. So here's what I remember. And I'll have to go back and listen to that, Alex. But what I remember Steve Day saying is that the one position Iowa may be better at is linebacker. I believe he did say that.
But he did state at the very start that no one at Iowa's roster would start at Michigan. I specifically remember that because it caught my ear. I'm like, oh, I was hoping you would catch him on it, but I don't know if you missed it or because he went on for a little while and maybe it was just kind of lost and lost in the transcript. But
I here's the deal. I mean, I don't know. Then that's why that's why I try to rely on guys like Steve Dace who know the Michigan roster much better than I do. But Alex, I don't know that like, yes, I would probably, without even looking at who Michigan returns at linebacker, I would venture to say that Jack Campbell, maybe even Seth Benson, may end up being starters if they were on the Michigan roster. But you're going to tell me that you think, well, I know you just told me that you think Riley Moss would start for Michigan. I don't know about that. I don't know who Michigan returns, and I get that Riley Moss was defensive back of the year. I'm not as high, let's just say this. I'm not as high on Riley Moss as some people are. But where else? Okay, so maybe we can make an argument that Riley Moss, who else is going to start on Michigan's roster without even, I know it's hard to have this debate because we don't have the rosters and the depth charts in front of us, but who on Iowa's offense would start for Michigan?
Keegan Johnson is probably the only guy I could foresee.
Maybe Sam Laporta.
Yeah, I could see him too.
Sure.
But I mean, out of the entire offense, those are really the only two that I could, arguably see. I don't think anybody else. Maybe Arlen Bruce, but I think that's a long shot. But
yeah, I think Laporta, and I think you could. I'm not saying you're wrong about Riley Moss, but I'm just not as high as some people are on Riley Moss. So yeah, maybe I didn't call him out for it, but I do remember him saying something about he believes that possibly Iowa has an advantage at linebacker, and he's biased, right? I mean, he's a Michigan fan, just like I'm an Iowa fan. But yeah, I think you're right. I think that maybe is selling Iowa a bit short without looking at who Michigan has returning at tight end, because I just don't know. Mark Rogers would know better than I do, but I think Sam Laporta would have a decent shot, and certainly the linebackers and maybe Riley Moss. But after that, Kayvon Merriweather, I think, is a good safety, but he's got to take a jump. I don't know who Michigan has back there. Along the defensive line, everybody's hyped up about Iowa's defensive line. They got to prove it to me. I don't know. Losing Iowa's best pass rusher in Van Valkenburg, who was, I think, at best a slightly above average defensive end in the Big Ten. I don't know anybody on that defensive line for Iowa that scares me. So I can kind of see where he's coming from.
I like what I saw from Joe Evans. I thought Joe Evans last year was a better pass rusher than Van Valkenburg. Now, he didn't see as much playing time as Van Valkenburg, so I think I think most teams keyed off on Van Valkenburg, double teaming him or, chip blocking him. And then when Joe Evans got in, he's kind of a new face. No one really know what his skill set was. I thought he was a better pass rusher last year, maybe just for that simple fact that teams didn't know how to defend him. So I would put some money on that Joe Evans could have a breakout year this year and I don't think he's going to be an Aiden Hutchinson or I can't think of the other guy's name from Michigan. The other
Ojabo.
Yeah. I don't think he's going to be to that level, but I think he's going to be a disruptive force on that line. Just I liked what I saw from him last year, and I hope to see, maybe he'll improve a little bit with his hands and his footwork, getting to the quarterback a little more.
I don't have a problem with that estimation. What I will say is we have to recognize the fact, and I like the fact that Kelvin Bell and this Phil Parker and these guys do this, but Iowa loves to run 6, 7, 8 guys along that defensive line, and not all Big Ten teams do that. But Joe Evans is undersized, as you know, and part of the reason he's not playing every down is because has been at times a liability in run defense, run support. So, and that's partly, I think you can attribute that to his size. So I agree, But part of the reason he's so effective at what he does is because he's got a niche. He comes in on third downs on obvious passing situations. He's fresh, and he can tee off on the quarterback. Whereas, other guys, you mentioned Ojabo and Aiden Hutchinson, those guys have to do it all. They're in their every down defensive linemen. So when you don't have the advantage of having those types of guys, I think how Kelvin Bell runs his system, and Phil Parker as well, with guys like Evans and guys like Nate Meyer, if you remember him. I believe that was even maybe before Kelvin Bell, right around the time he was hired. But they've had some of those smaller, undersized. Parker Hesse was an example, although he became a good run stopper. Sometimes you got to develop these guys, and what they are in there for early is to pass rush.
Yeah. So, I'm kind of going to be looking out for him as the season comes along, because I think he could be one of Iowa's impacted defensive linemen. I mean, we're returning three out of our 4 starters, so that I think that bodes well. I know our defensive line didn't put a whole lot of pressure on the quarterback or get a whole lot of sacks. I know we did all right in the pressure category, but we just didn't get to the quarterback.
Yeah.
But I'm expecting an improvement there, and I think I'm with the hype of Iowa's defensive line. I know, in the spring game, the Iowa's defensive line kind of manhandled the offensive line, so I don't know what that says about either or. But I think this defensive line is going to be, what it's hyped up to be.
And Alex,
let
me just add this in real quick, not to be devil's advocate here, but you do remember what Don Patterson said, observing some of that spring game action, is he said, the good news is the defensive line looked really good. The bad news is they were going up against our offensive line.
Yeah. So, I don't know, maybe Iowa's defensive line is extremely good, or maybe Iowa's offensive line is going to have another down year this year, which I think that's another.
I think it's probably somewhere in between. Is that safe to say? I think the offensive line probably isn't quite as bad as it looked, and the defensive line maybe is not quite as dominant as it looked. But I do agree with you, and CJ brings it up in the chat. Lucas Van Ness looks different. He looks the part. Could he be that next Drew Ott type? I don't know. Maybe. And if you can have a guy like that, Iowa's better when they have at least one guy who's a dominant edge rusher, and they didn't have that last year. Van Valkenburg was good, but he just wasn't. He's not a dominant edge rusher in the Big Ten Conference. He's a bit undersized as well. He's a high energy guy, but he's not AJ Epinesa. He's not Anthony Nelson. He's not Chauncey Golston. So if they can develop a guy like that this year, I think it'll help. I think Logan Lee's got some upside with his size. I've heard good things about Noah Shannon in the spring. Y.A. Black is a guy who had a lot of hype when he came here. And again, physically, he looks the part. John Wagner, talk about looking the part. That guy looks the part, and his clock is ticking. No, they got bodies. I'm with you. And if they can utilize those guys and give Joe Evans, not force Joe Evans to have to play every first and second down, but really utilize him on third. No, I'm all for that. And we're not even bringing up the freshman Aaron Graves, who I'm very high on.
Yeah. So I think Iowa's defensive line is going to be astonishing this year. But maybe my last point I wanted to make, I saw some video of Spencer Petras at a training camp with Peyton Manning, and I did we not see this last year where he was in a camp with a pretty high ranking NFL quarterback, ex-quarterback that he was in camp with, and then we got the results we saw this last season. So do you think he's going to be? Do you think this is going to help, or is it just kind of, are we just, putting lipstick on a pig at this point?
Well, I don't know how to answer the question because last year, I know Tony Racioppi, I remember reading this, he spoke with the Des Moines Register and basically told the Des Moines Register that he thinks Spencer was going to take a big jump, and I didn't see it, although you do have to weigh the fact that Iowa's offensive line was not very good. I still think Iowa has a problem, and we don't talk about this enough. Iowa has a problem with receivers getting separation. That's a factor. But no, Spencer was not good last year. There's no question about it. So I don't know how to answer that question. I am frustrated, just like Don Patterson talked about this on the show. We keep bringing up Don's name, but he was on the show with Mark and I, and you remember him saying the same thing I did. The fact that we didn't get to see each quarterback against equal competition during spring is extremely frustrating.
Yeah.
And I hope that behind closed doors, Alex Padilla, and Joey Labus, because we keep hearing, well, Joey Labus doesn't know the offense. Well, Alex Padilla does, right? And if he doesn't, then we got some serious problems. So there's no reason why those two guys couldn't have taken equal snaps unless Spencer Petras is the incumbent starter. And I think that's probably the case right now. I'm assuming Spencer is the starter. Do I think he's made some vast jump? I don't know. I know we've heard that he's trimmed down and that he's taken it, you know, more seriously this year, which would imply that he didn't take it very seriously last year, I guess. So it's just a wait and see. I think it's clear that he's never going to be a real mobile guy, but he needs other pieces around him working specifically on that offensive line. And right now, I don't have a ton of confidence based on what we saw in the spring, but I do have confidence in personnel. I think potential is there. And I've heard great things about George Barnett. We're seeing it on the recruiting trail. So we'll see. I just don't know how to answer that question. We'll have to wait, and we probably won't really find out until that Michigan game, because I don't think Iowa State's defense has lost a lot. You're going to be tested a bit against Rutgers on the road and South Dakota State at home, but I don't think you're really going to get a test until you get that rematch against Michigan October 1st.
I'll say that I don't think Iowa's going to have too much of a problem with Rutgers. I know you go back to 2016, but how many players on that are still there from 2016? Granted, you have a COVID year, so you might have a super senior, but this Rutgers offense was horrid. I mean, it was very comparable to Iowa's. Their defense was really what won them 5 games, and Iowa's defense is better. So
yeah, but isn't that the same as 2016, Alex? It was like 14-7. So I mean.
Yeah, that's 2016. We're 6 years ahead now.
No, but I'm just saying, if we're talking about a strong Rutgers defense and a strong Iowa defense and two offenses that can't move the ball, I mean, we're talking about two of the least productive quarterback rooms in the Power 5, not just in the Big Ten. So if we're just going off that, that's why the Rutgers game scares me, because they do play defense. I expect them to be improved. Another year under Schiano, who I like, and I think he's a little bit underrated in this conference. I'm not saying they're going to lose, but I think that's a trap game because it comes before the Michigan game.
I think the game that scares me the most is actually South Dakota State. That one scares me more than anything, because it's like, oh boy.
There's some sneaky ones on the schedule. No question about it.
Yeah. But, going back to Petras, I think, Alex Padilla, when he came in last year, I think he did provide a spark. The one thing that, obviously everyone talks about is that he's a mobile quarterback. And I think when you have a bad offensive line, you need some type of, Band-Aid to kind of help cover it up until things get actually healed. But anyways, I feel like I've been on here a little too long, taking up some time. But hey, I appreciate you taking my call, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow with who do you have on tomorrow? Who's Iowa got next? Purdue?
That's a good question. So I'll just admit that Mark scheduled our guest for tomorrow. So okay. I believe it's Ohio State. No, it's not Ohio State. Nope. It's
so you had on Illinois.
Northwestern? Is it Northwestern? I don't know. We've got somebody coming on tomorrow. Mark's got a media guest for tomorrow.
That loud boom was a firework. It is Ohio State.
It is Ohio State. It's not Ohio State. Is it really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, we'll have an Ohio State guest on it. Yeah. So tomorrow should be fun.
Well, unless you count the off week, then you won't have anybody. But otherwise, yeah.
No, we need to get. If we go at this rate, we'll be going into camp and still previewing the season. So no, we'll have a guest on tomorrow.
All right. Again, thanks for taking my call, Corey. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Alex. Thanks for the call, and a great call so far. And I'm going to leave the call line open. 515-635-1601. 515-635-1601 to recap the weekend. And I'm going to answer this next call, and then I'll yammer here for a second. So the call line is tied up at the moment. But to recap this weekend, you've got Trevor Lauk, who's already committed, 4-star, and you could argue the second highest rated recruit who was on campus this past weekend. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn there. Kadyn Proctor, the clear number 1. But Lauk, a 4-star, and Iowa nabs him last night, 6'6", 287. If you missed the video earlier today that I released on Lauk's tape, check it out. Hear it from the Hawkeye of the Storm. And again, I've heard that Kenneth Merriweather's visit went well. Sounds like Logan Howland's visit went well too. So, boy, Iowa looking good along the offensive line, as Howland is a 6'7", 280-pound offensive tackle from New Jersey. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Lomansky, Corey.
Lomansky, how are you, sir?
I'm good. It's a beautiful week of weather. Just want to compliment you on having Tony Rasiopi on. I know somebody in the chat a while back said he's a rental QB teacher, which I found very humorous. And I guess I felt better about what he does to quarterbacks in the summer, Pickett at Pitt, and he made a good explanation of how that guy improved. Rasiopi stressed the unit. And I really thought about that hard because he stressed an offensive line, play calling, wide receivers getting open. That's a legitimate take, and I respect that highly. However, if you look at, let's not just take the offensive unit, let's take all three units and say, if you don't have something, you lose your wide receiver to Purdue. You have an offensive line with hope, but not solid. What you do have, and I guess I'm spurred on and motivated by Marco Lainez's interview. Sometimes you hear people talk and your light bulb goes on and you get excited because they're the right kind of people, irregardless of talent level. And if you're going to go out on the field this fall and you've lost your best wide receiver, you're trying to get the offensive line time to improve, which they will next year. I'm out of patience with this. I'm not going to say him by name. The starting quarterback's going to improve. You've got to come in with a, like Don Patterson says, what is your talent in your young quarterbacks, and have packages and get them on the field if you got a lead and see what you got. I refuse to believe that Alex or Joey, even Marco as a young quarterback, there's freshman quarterbacks in the Big Ten that come out and can play. And when you look at the rankings of Mark Rogers, I couldn't even listen to the whole thing because he ranked the Big Ten quarterbacks in the Big Ten. And I like that he's kind of distanced a little bit from the Iowa program and he's a Buckeye. I have no patience by game 3 if we don't see some packages and some time to see what these young guys can do under pressure.
Lomansky, I thought he schmoozed you because you weren't you pretty positive after that Rasiopi interview?
Well, yeah, he kind of tricked me.
Well, you don't know. We don't know yet, right? We don't know. I mean, what if he's right? What if Spencer Petras is the next Kenny Pickett?
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Okay. He had the same freaking lingo a year ago, how he's going to take. I remember the conversation, how he's going to take a leap. My whole point is to kind of take it a little bit away from Spencer Petras, and let's look at it logically from a head coach or a strategic Hayden Fry look. What do we got and what do we don't got? And if we don't have a strong offense or a top 10 quarterback in the Big Ten, hell, Illinois' quarterback, Mark Rogers, had ahead of us. Damn near threw up my dinner listening to that. You've got to have an angle, a strategic angle to, okay, what do we got? We got young talent on the bench with a mobile quarterback, and I just want to point out to Alex, Joey, we had Padilla on the field last fall. He sure as hell didn't suck.
Well, he wasn't good, Lomansky. I mean, listen, I think he was better. I'm with you on that. Collectively, I think he was better, but the numbers say he was pretty mediocre. I mean, I think he was under 50% completion percentage. I mean, he wasn't great.
You put me on your call-in show and let me do one or two shows, and people will tell me to get the hell off the air and get Corey Brada back on. But you give me the appropriate amount of time to get the shakes out of there and just be comfortable. Are we supposed to, I'll say his name. Are we supposed to give Spencer another year to get comfortable and improve and make a leap? We missed an opportunity last year, Corey. In my gut, we missed an opportunity.
Well, I understand where you're coming from. I do believe that the competition should be wide open. You've heard me say that a number of times. I don't know that it really is. Every time Joey Labus's name has been brought up, we basically get the answer that, well, he's just behind because he doesn't know the offense, which tells me that's the coaching staff's way of kind of trying to calm down the hype, because there has been some hype around Joey Labus because he is more mobile, and I've heard good things about his arm. But everything that I've been told, like it or not, Lemansky, everything that I've been told is that the players collectively really like Spencer Petras.
Doesn't mean they dislike who's behind him and they're against getting him on the field a little bit. Why can't we play for 2 years down the road?
Well, Mark, you brought up Marco Linus. He's not here this year. So, I mean, he won't be here until next year. And you do have Carson May coming in this year. But, I mean, do you expect Kirk to play a freshman quarterback that didn't even go through spring? I don't. I mean, I think it's a far-fetched idea to believe that he's going to even play Joey Labus. I hope that Labus is given an opportunity, especially if Petras struggles. You're right. I don't expect this. If Spencer struggles early on, then you have to make a change. You have to. There is no way around that, especially given the schedule. If he's struggling in September against the likes of South Dakota State, Nevada, Iowa State, and Rutgers, then no, you need to make a change because it's going to get a lot tougher once you hit October.
Corey, I want to sit beside you in the stadium with a beer and about game 2 go, would you rather watch this or watch paint dry offensively? I know what you say to me. You turn to me and go, well, let's go get some popcorn and come back when the defense is on the field.
Yeah.
Well, I really think that the patience level, I think last year was a good indication of we need, not a gimmick, we need a strategic attack to help this team win the Big Ten West with a lot harder schedule. And I'll tell you right now, I'm nervous as hell because all those other Big Ten quarterbacks have 10 better quarterbacks, according to Mark Rogers. They're getting better too.
You're right. Yeah.
I mean, seriously, like and it could happen. He's got a good long ball arm. Let's say Spencer takes a leap. Did Mark Rogers have him 11, 12 to number 9 in the Big Ten West, number 8? I'm sick of the Michigan arrogance and Ohio State arrogance. I'm freaking sick of it. I want results on the field. And I'm probably more charged up about next year because I love what the assistants are doing in recruiting. So now I'm picking on my age bracket, the Hayden Fry age bracket fan. Let's get with the younger generation and say, let's do something different. Don Patterson talks about if the youth are equal in talent, put them on the field. And Andre Tippett in his 3rd year ended up playing for the Patriots and playing in the Super Bowl, and Hayden Fry's 3rd recruiting year. Andre Tippett. We haven't had an Andre Tippett in years. I mean, I guess I love our assistants in the basketball program. I love our assistants in the football program. Can we be innovative instead of vanilla? I'm sick of vanilla ice cream with the strategy.
Well,
do you remember the fullback play that didn't work?
Yes.
Okay. I was so happy. I didn't even care if it didn't work. I just loved that we tried, that we had innovation, that we had. God, didn't you just like, even though it didn't work, weren't you like, God bless the whole coaching staff for having guts?
Yeah, I didn't love the fact that they ran a halfback pass to a fullback over his shoulder. I didn't like that. But I do like the fact that they tried something different. I don't like the fact that was the only thing different that they tried. Yeah. But no, that's you need to change things up. It's not all about trick plays, but you're right. There needs to be some going against the grain. And I do believe, you've heard me say this, Lemansky, because you listen to the show every week. you've heard me say that I do believe we're going to see a different attack. I'm not saying they're going to go spread and they're going to be throwing, it's going to be an air raid. No, but I do believe we're going to see more downfield attack because I think Kirk is no dummy. He understands that this is not there's no way Brian is named the next head coach at Iowa. And that's the ultimate plan. There's no way that's going to happen if the offense is sucky. Okay. Let's just put it frankly. So the offense has to be better. The fans have to see something different. The donors have to see something different. And so I think, even though I don't have a ton of confidence that it will work to the extent that it needs to work, I'm not saying definitively that it won't, but I do believe we'll see more downfield attack. I think there will be more. My guess is that they will utilize LeVar Woods more in special teams with more of what we saw in the 17, 18, 19 seasons with more trickeration on special teams. But I do think we'll see more of a downfield attack. And I think that's, that's good. That's good. I mean, that's a good thing, but you still need time. You still need your quarterback to make the throw. You need your quarterback to have time, which comes back to the offensive line, and you need your receivers to gain separation. And all three of those things are big question marks, I think, right now.
You mentioned my viewpoint of Rasiopi. What was yours after that conversation?
I think Tony, my viewpoint of Tony Rasiopi is that he's a very, very well-spoken individual. I think he's a really nice person. I've had several conversations with Tony off the air, and I think he's a very, very nice person. I have no doubt that he's a good coach. I would also acknowledge the fact that he's a salesman, right? These are his clients. That's what they are. So I'm not going to go all in on, wow, I mean, that he just rubbed me where it hurt. No, I'm not going to go that far. I do believe that he's being factual, that Spencer's working hard. I believe that he's factual when he says that Spencer is very likable, that he's a tremendous human being. However, I understand the fact that he's a salesman, and so I have to see it on the field before I really believe it, that there's going to be a significant change. And that is the frustrating thing. And you remember me saying this late in the season, Lewanski. The frustrating thing about Iowa's offense is it's not just quarterback play. It's the offensive line. It's play calling. It's receivers. It's clock management. Like all those. So that's the tough thing. I mean, it's not just one problem to fix, but it starts with quarterback.
And I really liked his unit comment, but if you buy that, and I do buy that unit statement, there's even more logic to do what Purdue did and play multiple quarterbacks and show different looks and go your standard offense and then do something really wacky and then change it up again. I mean, I think we could have won the Kentucky game with just a little bit different look, but I'll hang up because I've talked long enough, and I like your optimism tonight. I had to bring you down a little bit to reality that next year is going to take a little more imagination because of a harder schedule. And I like more imagination in several areas instead of let's be afraid that we don't want to make mistakes. So let's not put too many chips on the poker table. Let's keep it close to the vest, and maybe we can hit a field goal in the end and win.
Lewanski, did you say next year?
This year. I meant this fall.
It's June 27th, Lewanski. It's this year. we're 2 months away.
But then you can see how nervous I am about this season by saying that.
Don't be nervous. Be excited. It's still something to be excited for.
Well, let's land this lineman, and then maybe my next call I'll be less urgent to change things up. And enjoy your show and keep up the good work.
Sounds good. Thanks, Lewanski. Appreciate the call. And great calls this evening. I appreciate everybody who's chimed in. The line is back open, 515-635-1601. 515-635-1601. If you want to talk Iowa football, and we're talking recruiting. And we've gotten some news over the past hour. One being, well, we've got another phone call coming in. One being the announcement that three-star wide receiver Jeron Tibbs, 6'4", 193-pound, three-star wide receiver for the 2023 class, will be announcing his decision at noon Eastern tomorrow. He was on campus this past weekend, so that might be good. We did see that through his profile on Rivals that he also visited Purdue, and certainly Purdue is the hometown school, about an hour from where Jeron Tibbs plays high school football. So we'll wait and see, but we'll get an announcement tomorrow from Jeron Tibbs. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Zach, or ZJ Wags.
Hey, ZJ Wags. How are you, sir?
Good. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing good.
So, first of all, I did see your interview with Tony and also with Steve Dace. I did like the little dig on Michigan baseball that you did with Steve Dace.
Hey, had to be done. Had to be done.
Had to be done. And I don't want to turn in. I hate to almost turn into a Spencer Petras defender. I do think it shows of someone to say that they want to go somewhere and learn from someone maybe like Peyton Manning.
Absolutely.
To try to get better. And I do wonder, because I know he was injured. I think Tony said his shoulder was somewhat messed up.
Yep. That
who knows how long that shoulder was messed up for, and if he just wasn't saying anything. My hope is that that's the case, and that he does take that jump forward, because I think they got too aligned on that defense, because that defense was playing out of this world for the first 6-7 games, 4 or 5 interceptions a game, something that no one sees.
Well, Zach, let me just say this. If that's the case, if Spencer was as injured as you're implying that he possibly was, shouldn't Iowa fans be mad at the coaching staff for playing him? Yeah,
and I've torn the labrum in my shoulder, and I played in co-ed softball when I did it, and it does affect. Even a minor little tear affects everything.
Wait. Was it a torn labrum? Are you just speculating?
No,
on what
that's what I had.
Okay, because that's what I had. I had the same injury. That's why I was curious, because I don't remember ever hearing that Spencer had to undergo surgery on that shoulder. And if it was tore, I would expect that he would have undergone surgery. But no, you're right. He was hurt, because remember, he missed that Northwestern game. He played part of it, which again was kind of a strange that he even started that game when he was hurt. But he played part of that game, struggled, and then, according to what Tony Rasiopi said, he was almost back. He was still late. He was still ailing a bit against Illinois, and the coaching staff elected to go with Padilla. But I don't know where his health was the rest of the season. But if his health was less than 100%, then I disappointed in the coaching staff, because there was not a significant enough gap between him and Padilla on the field that it would defend playing a guy who's hurt.
Right. And, I like to listen to your interview with Tony. It does sound like Spencer is mostly a stand-up guy, and I can only imagine how he felt probably hearing all the heck from Iowa fans, and, probably some of the worst of comments. One of the reasons I know probably why Kirk kept them off of social media, to keep them away from that stuff. But do you think if the offense just ends up being decently good this year, do they have a shot at the Big Ten West?
What's decently good?
Better than last year.
I mean, you can't be worse than last year. I mean, it'd be very difficult to be worse than last year. The numbers say they were one of the worst in the Power 5. They were one of the worst in the FBS. So, no, I think here's what's crazy, and I haven't made any predictions yet on my channel, but I do believe Iowa's got a shot at the West. But I have went on the record and said if Iowa's offense isn't significantly better, they have no chance at 10 wins in the regular season, and I stand by that. However, if they do improve, and I'm talking, they finished 123rd in total offense last season in the country in the FBS. If they can get that number to top 80, and I think that's probably what you're talking about, right? Top 80, maybe?
Yeah.
If you can get that number to top 80, I think you can win 9 or 10 games. And I'm not ruling out winning 9 games with the offense they had, because I think the defense is going to be really good. I just don't know how you're going to knock off Michigan, Ohio State, Wisconsin, and then I that leaves you no margin for error. I mean, because let's remember, Iowa got trounced by 2 of those schools last year, and then the other one that he didn't play might have the best offense in the country in Ohio State. So I do believe Iowa has an opportunity to win the conference at win the division at 9-3 because of the fact that Minnesota and Wisconsin both have difficult schedules. Purdue's the one dark horse. They have a very favorable schedule. But yeah, I think they have got a chance at winning the West regardless.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. And I mean, if that defense can play out of this world like it did last year, except for part of the Michigan game, but as I think even Steve Dace pointed out, nothing a defense can do when they get off the field and 30 seconds later they're back on.
Right.
Because yeah, they did keep that, as Steve Dace did say, they kept that game. If they had any sort of offense, they could have had a chance of winning that game because it wasn't a blowout at half.
Right.
I think it was 14-3.
I believe so. Yeah, it was a 2-score game. I can tell you that
because they were down at half against Penn State, and yes, I know probably people will say had not Sean Clifford gone out, Iowa probably loses that game. But injuries and the big injuries in football happen. What if Iowa didn't lose Riley Moss for 2 or 3 games? I mean, you could play all those conjectures all day long. And you know, I remember, I'm old enough too to remember the last time Iowa had a lot of 5-star recruits. I think it was back in 2006. Remember, that's when we got Jay Christensen. And it's kind of the same situation that Petrus was in now. They let Jay Christensen, I believe he started as a freshman. I think he played his entire freshman year. And then Ferentz finally, I think, said, I've had enough. And then we got Ricky Stanzi. And he turned out pretty well.
Yeah.
But I'm not willing to completely throw in the towel on Petrus just yet.
Oh.
I just hope that offense, because, and I know I'm probably not the only Iowa fan who says it. I think you've said it too. Just way too predictable.
Yeah.
I could watch it on TV. I go, yep, here comes a run to the right.
Yeah.
It was that easy to predict. And with the one person who said that, no Iowa starters could start in Michigan. Tory Taylor could start in Michigan. Grant, Tory Taylor can start any team in Division I.
True.
He was the game changer against Penn State. And I think a partial game changer against Iowa State.
I agree with that. No, but here's the deal. Let's acknowledge this, too. As great as he was, if I recall, Michigan had a really good special teams unit. There's a lot of good punters across the country right now. But you're right. I think he would certainly have an excellent chance at starting at Michigan.
Yeah, and like as my comment earlier said, with whatever sport, whether it's wrestling, both sides of basketball, because Lisa and Fran are really stepping up their recruiting, it's hard not to be excited as an Iowa fan, even with someone like Keegan Murray leaving, because that team would be just as loaded this year, but can't deny a guy a chance to go when he's a top 5 NBA pick.
Right.
And if they can get the whole NIL stuff cleaned up, especially with losing recruits because of it, gosh, all 4 of those, including some of the non-revenue, including baseball, because I know they've signed a couple people. I mean, Iowa sports seems to be on the up and up, and I think you said it too. Being in the Big Ten championship game, at least for basketball and football as well, it's exposure.
Yeah. Yeah, I've gotten into it with some people. I got into it with somebody today on YouTube that was, it was in response to a video that I did on Keegan Murray being drafted, and it brought up the Richmond game. And I understand people's frustration, but we have to acknowledge the fact that just like you acknowledge the fact that Iowa football won the Big Ten West, Iowa basketball did win the Big Ten tournament, and I think that's an accomplishment. And we put so much stock in singular things that sometimes we forget to appreciate the moment and forget to appreciate what these teams are accomplishing. With that being said, it doesn't take away from the criticism that's deserved, right? I mean, there is criticism that's deserved for Kirk Ferentz, and there's criticism that's certainly deserved for Fran McCaffrey.
Right, and you're kind of a little off topic. I do believe the Big Ten should maybe do basketball a little more justice, maybe move the tournament up a day or 2.
I agree.
Because you're asking people to play on Sunday, 3 or 4 games in 4 days, and then they're turning back around playing Thursday.
No, what Richmond in Richmond's defense, though, they did play Sunday as well. They won their conference tournament Sunday.
But I think, and I think the Big Ten would be well served to do that, because the women's tournament's over by the Sunday prior. They could start on Monday and play 2 games, have an off day, and championship on Saturday. Because if it didn't make an impact on the selection show, then what was the point of the game besides exposure?
Yeah. I mean, again, if that's a fair question, if we're basing almost everything on the tournament, because some people would say the Big Ten championship is an accomplishment, just like getting to the Sweet 16 is an accomplishment. But I know that the people nowadays don't really think of it that way. They want tournament success, and specifically the NCAA tournament. They want success in late March.
Right, and maybe some of those fans forget and we all kind of want to forget the Todd Licklider years, because those just erased from our memory.
Right. And let me interrupt you just for a second, because I did just get this information in, since you just segued to basketball for a moment. I know this is a football show, but this just in: Iowa basketball just offered a 2024 4-star shooting guard, Kerr Tang, a 4-star out of Massachusetts. Iowa's done very well out there. Certainly in the East Coast with the likes of DeSante Bowen, Josh Agundale. They've been very active in the area. So Kerr Tang just reported an offer from Iowa. So just thought I'd throw that into the mix.
Yeah, and like I said, every coach seems to be doing their darndest right now in recruiting, and it's hard not to be excited with the 4- and 5-star for football, even though Iowa's been developing 1- and 2-star recruits for the past 20 years to be NFL stars. I don't believe Kittle I think Kittle might have been a 1 or 2-star.
Yeah, he was not highly recruited. So, no.
And look at him now.
to piggyback off what I said earlier, the fact that Iowa's done well at quarterback, in my opinion, well at quarterback in recruiting, specifically for the 23 class. Well, 24. Honestly, the 22 class, you could argue they've done well. I'm not as high on Carson May as some people are, but Carson May, Caleb Johnson, Jazian Patterson, and then for 23, Lanez and Raphael, they've done well at those 2 positions. So maybe that's a good thing, because you're right. They develop tight ends regardless of their star rating. What they need are more polished quarterbacks and more polished running backs. I think that's fair.
And if Lanez, and I saw your interview with him as well, great head on his shoulders for a kid his age. If he is Brad Banks 2.0, good Lord, is all I have to say.
Well, and I didn't mean to imply that he is going to be the next Brad Banks, but the way he plays, I think it gives me shades of Brad Banks. And just the fact that he said on the show that that's who he looked up to and who he emulated, I just thought was ironic.
Well, it was, besides 2016, it was really almost the last time Iowa changed their offense. They did under Drew Tate. Well, you have to when you lose 5 running backs to ACL injuries. But, it was more of a little bit more spread with Brad Banks, because, he could take off and get you 30. And they didn't have a deep receiving core. Basically, I think Mo Brown and C.J. Jones. And Dallas Clark doesn't hurt either. And that very, very dominant defense. But anyway, good talking. Like I said, excitement. Hopefully Kadyn does what everybody hoping he's going to do, and we'll just keep churning him out an offensive line in Iowa and getting 1st-round draft picks.
Absolutely. Appreciate the call, sir. Call again.
Yep. Have a great evening.
Take care. Great calls this evening. Gary bringing that up. Yeah, strong calls this evening, Gary. And to everybody, the line is back open, 515-635-1601. Almost forgot the number. I am here for the remainder of the 8 o'clock hour, if everybody wants me to be. If nobody wants to stick on that long, then I would be happy to power down early. But we've got 108 people on here, and appreciate all the commentary in the chat. I do want to get to a couple of questions that I missed earlier. CJ, he says, I don't know how well you've been keeping up with practice, but have you heard anything about Peters being but legitimate starter. Nothing specific, CJ. However, the signs point to the fact that Spencer is the starter. I think there's been several questions from the media over the course of the last few months about the QB situation, and it's basically been implied that Spencer is the front runner. And until I hear otherwise, he is the starter. And I'm not saying that's what I want or what I don't want. I'm just saying that's the gist of what I have heard. Now, Matthew says, any word on Proctor? And thank you, Matthew, for complimenting the show. Nothing from Proctor specifically. I said on a recent segment that I do believe we'll get a decision soon. Now, if he waits until August, I'll be eating my words. I could be totally off. Maybe he will. But I have not heard anything from Proctor. We'll just have to wait and see on it. But certainly Iowa's got an opportunity because they got him on campus and they're in the final two. So I'm positive about Kadyn Proctor still. I heard his visit went well, but we've got nothing official. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
This is Alex. Like Locke and Proctor start for Iowa.
Say it again one more time.
Would Locke and Proctor start for Iowa?
Well, let's projecting forward. Certainly, I think Proctor will day one. I've said that. I think he's a generational talent. He's a 5-star, obviously. I think he'll start day one. Lauk is an intriguing guy. He's got the size. He's got good footwork. He's there's going to be a bit of a learning curve, I think, for him with pass blocking, maybe a bit. Now, maybe I'm selling him short in that regard. But they're just going to be, especially if Proctor gets here, they're going to be loaded at tackle. So chances are that at some point Lauk will start. I think that's fair, given his given the player that he is, and I don't know what the future is after Proctor's done, because I think Proctor will be here 3 years. Lauk may be here 4 or 5.
Marco has to be stunned.
What's that?
Marco Linez has to be happy.
Yeah, and Marco Linez has also got a teammate of his, Logan Howland, who could end up committing to Iowa as well, and he's a tackle. So they're going to be loaded at that position. So that's why I don't want to say definitively that Lauk will end up being a starter. But yeah, I could see a scenario where, hey, in 2024, it's Proctor and Lauk on the bookend tackles for Iowa. Absolutely.
All right, thank you so much. Go Hawks.
Appreciate it, Alex. Go Hawks. And good question. Yeah, I mean, when's the last time we could say that Iowa honestly, when's the last time we've said that Iowa is loaded at offensive tackle? As many, the number of linemen that Iowa has produced to the league has been phenomenal. However, Iowa has had a problem with having really dominant offensive lines. As much as that's the perception about Iowa, Iowa has not been dominant on the offensive line for a very long time. All right, they won the Moore Award in 2016. I didn't think that line was very good. So I do believe that we'll see. In 2 to 3 years, assuming these guys stay healthy and they stay committed, especially if Proctor comes here, we're going to see one of the better personnel offensive lines, if that makes sense, since a very long time ago. And I'm talking probably pre-2010, at least projecting forward. These guys got to play. They haven't even gotten here yet. I get it. I like the personnel here. I said that earlier in the show. I like the personnel we've got here right now with David Cobb and Myslinski and Colby. I know a lot of people are real high on Richmond. He's got to prove it to me on the field. I don't think he was very good last year, and he was young. They got bodies. They got to play. They got to play better. Justin Britt's another guy who's got to play better on the interior. They did lose Linderbaum. They lost Ince. They lost Schott. So they got to be better. But no, as far as potential, they've got a lot of it. 515-635-1601. 515-635-1601. Steve Sport comments, grain of salt time, but I've heard that Petrus has been much better this spring with a faster release and check down timing. And I'm with you, Steve. I've heard a lot of great things, but I need to see it on the field before I'm going to be bought in. Joe says, any update on Charlie Jones? Joe, other than the fact that he is enrolled at Purdue, I expect him to start. I expect him to start on special teams. I expect him to start at receiver. As you probably remember, Purdue lost David Bell. They lost their top receiver heading into this year due to academics. So I think Charlie Jones has an excellent chance at starting on offense. I think that's probably why he went there. He's got chemistry with Aiden O'Connell, those guys' previous teammates. And then I think Tracy's got an opportunity to start as well. Erica says, would love to know why we're having trouble attracting tight ends. I thought we were tight end you. Great question, Erica. I don't know that I would say we're having problems attracting tight ends, but Iowa has lost some battles to some bigger schools. The kid that whose name escapes me that just committed to Miami a week or two ago. Miami, if Iowa's not my tight end you, then certainly Miami probably is. And then Mac Markway was lured by the LSU appeal, and maybe NIL was a factor in that decision. But they'll get somebody. And they've got two guys coming in this year in Ostringa and Vanderbush. I am high on Ostringa. I don't know as much about Vanderbush. I mean, I've certainly looked at tape of Cale Vanderbush, but they'll get somebody, and they know how to develop that position. So I'm not concerned. I'm not concerned about tight end. They have lost guys, though, with Miamin transferring. They lost the kid from Texas, whose name is escaping me as well, and that's going to bug the living daylights out of me. Elijah Yelverton. I knew I'd think of it eventually. Elijah Yelverton gave up football this past spring. They did land, let's remember, Erica, they did land the kid from Lafayette, Stylianos, who will be here, who's there now, as far as I'm aware. So, no, they'll be fine at tight end. Depth is a concern for now. I mean, it's a concern because you only have two guys who have played in an Iowa uniform that are on scholarship. They've only got 3 scholarship tight ends, not counting the freshmen. So 3 non-freshman scholarship tight ends, but they'll be okay. They'll develop those guys, and as long as Laporta and Lachey stay healthy, they'll be strong at that position this year and probably moving forward. Kenneth says, when are you having Coach Don on? I'll have to ask Don, Kenneth. Haven't talked to Don lately about that. I've spoken with Don, but haven't talked about having him back on the show. Would love to have him back on. Certainly we'll be having him on in August, previewing the season. There's no question about that. So stick right here and over at Iowa, the Voice of College Football. Those 2 channels, these are the 2 channels you need to be locked into, from the Hawkeye of the Storm and Iowa at the Voice of College Football, because we'll be with you throughout the summer and into fall. Joe's Cap says, why does the media respect Husker football more than the Badgers in Iowa? Year in and year out, can anyone explain that to me? I'm a Badger fan, but respect Iowa a lot. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Joe. I think a lot of that is the Nebraska media is extremely, extremely passionate about Husker football. And there's Iowa media people that are homers. I don't consider myself to be a formal media person, and certainly with the Iowa media, but I admit that I'm a fan first, right? I think Husker fans and the media are so used to football being religion over there that I do think that has an impact in how the national media perceives these schools. Certainly with Wisconsin and Iowa being steady Eddie, but not real flashy, that's a factor as well. I think people like Kirk and Paul Chryst are fine with flying under the radar. I mean, let's keep the pressure on Nebraska. Now, I will say this, Joe. I think Nebraska is going to be a lot better this year. I might be totally off. I could be totally wrong, but I think Nebraska is going to have a chance at making a bowl game this year, maybe better. If they don't, then Scott Frost needs to be fired. It's a do or die year for him. Destiny Pirate says, go Hawkeyes. How do we not repeat 2021 giving away the Kentucky game burned more than the Florida Sun? Well, I think Iowa fans would be happy going 10-2 again, Destiny Pirate. But as it relates to the last 2 performances, one against Michigan and one against Kentucky, the Kentucky game was an odd ball game because you're evaluating Iowa against a Kentucky team that was missing some of its starters due to injury and different circumstances. The Michigan game was so lopsided, and the defense was put in such a difficult position. And then, let's be honest, the 2 games they lost in the regular season were blowouts with Wisconsin and Purdue. So I think the bottom line is the offense needs to get better. I mean, I'm stating the obvious, but it's got to get better. It starts with quarterback play, but I think maybe Iowa is more concerned with offensive line development, which is fine because that needs to get better as well. but I do believe it starts with quarterback play. If they run the ball well, look back at 2020, and I know that was a COVID year, but they ran the ball well in 2020. Offensive line play was really good in 2020. Whether that was a result of the offensive line just being better or other defensive lines not being very good, I don't have the answer to that question, but they ran the ball really well. And they went 6-2, won 6 games in a row, and were dominant in a lot of those games with Spencer Petras at quarterback. So let's remember that. If Iowa can run the ball effectively, they're going to be much better. They don't need to be elite offensively, but they need to be better. And I think they will be if they can run the ball effectively, right? That's what Iowa's predicated on. And they got a chance to do that. I mean, they've got talent at running back. I like the Williams guys. I almost call them brothers every time I bring them up. They're not brothers, but with the 2 Williams backs. And I think Caleb Johnson's got a chance at playing right away. And maybe Jazzy and Patterson. I like personnel. Offensive line. I like personnel at running back. But they got to prove it, right? They got to get out there and actually prove it. CJ says, I think Brian is given a year. If he doesn't do it, they'll hire the Colorado State guy, John Budmeyer, put Brian as a position coach. I don't see that happening, CJ, because I don't see a demotion happening. If anything, Brian will get a job somewhere else. Kirk will help him find a job somewhere else, would be my prediction if it doesn't work out this year. And I think John Budmeyer, I don't have any reason to believe that John Budmeyer's got any offers right now. But if you caught a recent segment here on this channel, you'll know that John Budmeyer, after this month, is not going to have income, at least not from Colorado State, not from Iowa, that I'm aware of. Now, Iowa may start paying him. I'm sure they probably will if he stays here. But he was under contract through the end of this month with Colorado State. So he was making 6 figures, like $325,000 a year. He was getting paychecks every month from Colorado State. So he was able to work as a volunteer here. Iowa didn't have to pay him. Had Iowa paid him, then Colorado State would have paid him less. So there was no reason for Iowa to pay. But after this month, we'll see what happens. We'll see what he ends up getting paid. That's a question mark. CJ says, isn't Petras a senior? No, he is a senior, I believe, right? He's a senior, but he's got an extra year if he wants it due to COVID, CJ. He's got an extra year if he wants it, and if Iowa was willing to take him back. Steve says, Spencer is the QB. Everybody knows that there's a chance Padilla never plays another snap and Joey transfers when the younger kids come in. So Steve is convinced of that. Rich says, CJ Stroud's numbers were video game in the Rose Bowl in just 1 half. Again, brought up that's the best offense maybe in the country that I was going to be going up against in October. Rich says Iowa's an elite quarterback away from being contenders. I agree with that. They were contenders last year in a way, won the division. But, exposed in the Big Ten championship game. CJ says, what happened to Wildcat? Good question. I don't know what happened to Wildcat. They used it a lot with Tyler Goodson. My problem with the Wildcat is they never threw out of it. So what are we running Wildcat if you never even give the threat of being able to throw? So that's but yes, I would like to see them, if they're going to use the Wildcat, throw out of the Wildcat. Kenneth, is Iowa getting in on the NIL transfer portal to improve the team? Well, we've talked about portal at length, right? So they've got the kid from Lafayette, the transfer, Steven Silianos. That's the only transfer portal guy they brought in this year. They haven't lost much. That's the only guy. They've lost 6 scholarship players to the transfer portal. I've heard good things about NIL. There were rumors circulating about Kadyn Proctor in Iowa and NIL. I'm not going to go into that right now because that's not my report. I have not been able to confirm that. But there's been speculation out there that Iowa has arranged a deal with Kadyn Proctor. But again, I don't know that for certain. But Iowa is trying to get a collective together. In my opinion, they went far too slow, but it is happening. Keegan, have you heard anything about Iowa's NIL deals? I've heard rumors that Iowa's okay. So I was a little behind the chat here, Keegan. Yes, that's what I've heard as well. There were rumors circulating out there that there was this big package and a car involved. That seemed hard for me to believe given Iowa's struggles with NIL basketball. But, if these private donors, here's the thing, Keegan, if these private donors and or alumni want to throw a bunch of money at an individual recruit, I don't know what's stopping them. Like, it doesn't have to be formal through the University of Iowa. Why can't, the CEO of Syngenta say, hey, Kadyn, if you want to come to Iowa, I'm going to give you, we're going to donate, $500,000 to you. Now, I don't know if that's actually happening, but I don't see anything in legislation that's current that stops that from happening. And why would you why, if you're Iowa, why would you not want that to happen? I mean, like, it's not your money. Let it happen. So from an organized standpoint, I really don't know. I'm not real up to speed on where Iowa's collective is right now, but I was told it was going to happen this summer. It was going to be in place. The Sports Nut. A couple more crystal balls. The crystal balls, isn't that? I believe that's 247 that uses the crystal balls. Says Kadyn to Iowa. And like I said, I've heard good things about several other recruits. We're going to get a decision from Jeron, wide receiver Jeron. No, of course I'm going to forget his name. Tibbs, Jeron Tibbs from Indianapolis. We'll get a decision from him at noon Eastern tomorrow, so 11 a.m. Central Time. I think we're going to get a decision from a defensive end fairly soon. I think we're going to get more decisions than maybe we anticipate this week. Yeah, I've been on this train for the last week or two, the Sports Nut, that I was going to land Kadyn Proctor. I'm not 100% certain on it. I don't think anybody is, maybe other than him and his family. But I do believe Iowa will land him. We'll see. I think it'll be soon. CJ says, I'm going to get heat for this, but Petrus being injured the whole season wouldn't be surprising. I feel like at times they hid the injuries and didn't say anything. Remember Beathard. Well, again, I don't know the excuse, CJ, because there was a difference. I don't think Iowa was real confident in who was behind CJ. There was a young Nate Stanley there in 2016. We know that there wasn't a huge gap between Spencer and Alex this past season. So if Spencer was hurt, there was no reason that we got the rest of the year with Spencer Petrus. So if that's the case, shame on the coaching staff. And I don't have any reason to think that's the case. But if we're speculating, then that's what I would say. Trosper says Iowa got a lot of breaks last year. They won a lot of close games. That's for certain. No question about it. Galen, you're forgetting how he rallied the team to come back and beat Nebraska last year. Galen, I'm going to give this to you that he did lead the team to a win against Nebraska last year. Alex Padilla did not play well in that game. However, Iowa broke that game open with a long Tyler Goodson run that set up a rushing touchdown. I believe it was a quarterback sneak from Spencer. And Spencer made a couple nice throws in that game. And so I think you can argue that, yeah, leadership helped coming back in that game. However, I do believe that maybe we make too much out of the quarterback change in that game. Would they have won with Alex Padilla? Who knows? Rich says credit the defense for the Nebraska comeback. Hayden says credit special teams. It was a weird game. I do give Spencer Petrus credit, but we give too much credit to quarterbacks when teams win and when they lose. So, yeah, maybe we're giving too much blame to Spencer for the Wisconsin and Purdue games. There was much more involved in those two losses than Spencer Petrus, but I think maybe we make too much out of Spencer Petrus coming in the second half against a Nebraska team that, you know, they lost a lot of close games, but they ended 3-9. But yeah, no, Alex Padilla struggled. There's no question about it. And the defense struggled early. They gave up a touchdown early in that game, which they had the habit of doing last year. Yeah, that was a crazy game, as Joe brings up. Trosper brings up the division conversation. Perhaps no divisions in the near future. The Sports Nut, do you think that Kirk is sheltering Labus because he's an underclassman? Or are Petrus and Padilla truly the best on the roster? I'd love to be able to answer that question, Sports Nut, because we've heard so much hype around Joey Labus. But the fact of the matter is that when we had an opportunity, a glimpse into Iowa football this past spring, we did not see equal snaps against equal competition. In other words, Spencer Petrus took the majority of the snaps against the ones. Padilla took a few less, and Labus took even less. If I recall, every offensive play for Joey Labus, every pass play was a rollout right. So I don't exactly understand why that is. Certainly, that tells me that I was not real confident in Joey compared to the other two guys, but I don't understand the downside of giving every quarterback equal snaps against equal competition, because if you don't have that, I can't answer the question, Sportsnut, because I don't know. There's no way to evaluate when you have a quarterback who puts up great numbers against the threes and a quarterback who puts up crappy numbers against the one, because that's exactly what happened. Petrus didn't look good against the starters. Labus looked good against the third stringers. I don't have an explanation as to why things were done that way this spring, other than the fact that I was just convinced that Spencer Petrus is the starter. And that's been a frustration of mine since it happened. All right, I got about 25 minutes left here. The number is 515-635-1601. 515-635-1601 If you want to call in, ask a question, comment, whatever the case may be, we're talking Iowa's 2023 class and Iowa's big recruiting weekend, although we've been kind of all over the map. But Iowa, a number of prospects on campus, several offensive tackles, one of which has already committed. Trevor Lauk, a Hawkeye, a 4-star kid out of Indianapolis, committed last night. Proctor, no decision from the 5-star as of yet. Couple in-state kids, I believe, Asa Newsom being one of those guys. Logan Howland, teammate of Marco Linez, was on campus as well. A couple tight ends, and Zach Ortworth and George Burhine. And then a couple D ends as well. Kendrick Gilbert, Jordan Allen, a D tackle, and Trevor Boer, 3-star guy. And Kenneth Merriweather, forgot him as well. I think we're going to get a decision from Merriweather pretty soon. But we'll see. We will see. 3-star kid as well. All right, when we come back, we'll be right back. When we come back, we'll be talking Iowa's 2023 class. What we're going to do is we're going to run through who Iowa currently has committed and talk about needs. We're going to look at the 23 class as it currently stands and discuss needs moving forward from the weekend that was and the year that is ahead, because Iowa still has, I shouldn't say a year, less than a year. We're looking at more like, 6 months until the final recruiting or final signing day, I should say, signing period. You got the early signing period this December. So more like 6 months, but recruiting needs moving forward. We're going to look at the class coming up. But first, a word from our sponsor. Take a moment to talk about health and performance optimization. I've decided to partner with Ascent Nutrition because of its unique approach to human health. Now, Ascent is endorsed by several neuroscientists, doctors, vets, and even strength and conditioning coaches across the country. Now, they've got organic coffee, which is mold and mycotoxin free. It's full of pure, clean, rich taste, and it's healthy for you. Algae oil DHA, it's used to support brain health, memory, focus, proper nervous system development in young children. It's even healthy for pets. And lastly, they have their unique wild-crafted pine pollen, which supports cardiovascular health, hormonal function, and a healthy libido. Click the links in the description below and use the code Hawkeyes to receive 10% off your order from Ascent Nutrition. So appreciate Ascent Nutrition. Thank you everyone who is here right now talking Iowa football and the recruiting class that is shaping up to be a good one. Iowa very highly ranked in the 24 class as well as of right now, although I don't really read too much into that. They've done well in the state of Iowa with some under-the-radar kids nationally, but it's early. The class is so young, but the 23 class looking good. So what I'm going to do is share my screen here, and we're going to take a look at the 2023 class as it stands right now. All right, this is who Iowa has committed right now. And hopefully you can see this. Well, let's move me to the side. Well, let's not do that. Well, let's just stick with that. All right. So Iowa, of course, we know Kendrick Raphael, a kid I am high on for this 23 class out of Naples, Florida. I'm confident that Kendrick Raphael will play early, given his size. He's 5'11", 180. Iowa's doing a nice job with these tweener backs right now, landing some of these kids who, Kendrick Raphael is going to have to get bigger. He's not going to be playing Big Ten football at 180, but he shows good agility on tape. He shows the ability to break tackles. He's got good speed. At least it appears that he's got good speed. He plays at a good level of high school football in Naples. I think he'll play early. Remember, it's easier for running backs to play early as opposed to other positions. Trevor Lauk, the commit from this weekend, we've talked about him at length. Marco Linez, if you missed the interview here on the show with Marco, check it out. He is a well-spoken young individual. Reminds me on tape of Brad Banks and how Banks played, and that's high praise for the Hunt School product. And he at one time was a 4-star as well. Rivals has him, this is 247 we're looking at. 247 Sports has him as a 3-star. Alex Moda, desperately need help with skill position talent. Right now, Alex listed as a 3-star athlete. He's a quarterback in high school, interestingly enough. Now, I think he'll play wide receiver his senior year, but he is a wide receiver in the making. 6'1", 175, got really good speed. He'll be a Hawkeye in 23. Leighton Jones really helped. And my understanding is that he is very close to Trevor Lauk. So his connection, being an Indiana guy, I think helped Iowa land Lauk. Leighton Jones, another defensive guy who's moving to center. At least that's the idea. He'll be playing center at Iowa at 6'4", 250, so he'll need to get a little bit bigger, but they like him as a center. Chase Brackney, Colorado guy. Sounds like the connection with Alex Padilla, because he also played at Cherry Creek. Chase Brackney's a Hawkeye. Ben Queter, local kid from Iowa City. I believe Ben is a wrestler, although I'm not as familiar. I've not spoken with Ben. Linebacker, projected as a linebacker at 6'3", 220. Maddox Borcherding Johnson, one of the earlier commits, defensive lineman from Norwalk, is coming in the 23 class. John Nestor, safety/corner from Chicago. He's coming in as well. Aiden Hall, an athlete from Harlan, which is a football-rich community. He'll be coming in as well as an athlete, Zach Lutmer, who I believe was very instrumental. He was on campus this weekend. And by the way, the guys that I mentioned this weekend that were on campus, these 23 guys, those were just guys that have not committed. A lot of these guys, Zach Lutmer, I believe David Kalker, Aiden Hall, those guys were all here as well. So these players were recruiting this week for Iowa. Also, David Kalker from Des Moines North, edge rusher at 2'4", 256. I like David Kalker as well. Guy who's kind of flown under the radar from a national perspective, not ranked according to 247. And then Cannon Leonard, who is a very intriguing prospect at 6'9", 265. I do wonder a bit, because of his size, whether he'll be able to play offensive tackle if he ends up being 6'10 or 6'11. But boy, that's an interesting problem to have a guy who's 6'9" playing tackle. I think it's an intriguing one. Lemansky, thank you for this, Lemansky. The super chat says, keep the faith, Hawkaholics. Make my day, Mr. Proctor. So thank you, Lemansky. And I tell you, if Iowa lands Kadyn Proctor, we will be here talking about it live. I can tell you that. May not be right away, but I'll do my best in that regard. The line is, I'm going to open the call line back up here, 515-635-1601. We're with you for the next 15 to 20 minutes. So if you have any questions or comments, give us a call, 515-635-1601, or throw it up in the chat. Aaron says a crystal ball for Kenneth Merriweather. That's not surprising. That's what I've heard. I'm assuming crystal ball. I don't want to speak for you, Aaron. I'm assuming that it's one of the major recruiting outlets, although that's you saying this, not me. I know that some of these recruiting sites are paid subscriber sites only, so I don't want to speak for who you're talking about. But I've heard good things about Kenneth Merriweather. Different Merriweather, not related to Kayvon, spelled differently as well. Let's see if I can find Oink Oink is here. Good to see you, Oink Oink. Yakov 22, would you be open to trade Ohio State Kadyn Proctor for a 5-star wide receiver? That's a good question. No, not as it currently stands, Yakov. I'll tell you why. Because if you don't have a line to protect your quarterback, it doesn't matter if you have a 5-star receiver on the outside. Now, with that being said, Iowa has done well away from Kadyn Proctor with Lauk committing, the guys they have now, and then they got a couple more projects, I think, with Cannon Leonard and Cale Crow and Jack Dotzler. However, I do believe you still take Proctor, but certainly they could use a 5-star receiver. I wish I didn't have to choose, but it's a good question. Cole is here, says, what do you and other Hawkeye fans see as the biggest problem with Nebraska football? That's a great question. I would say coaching, Cole. You're not going to like that, but when you lose a bunch of close games, I've heard Scott Frost on numerous occasions kind of throwing his players under the bus. To me, that just gives off a bad vibe. But again, with that being said, we'll see. He's used the transfer portal well this offseason. It's now or never for Scott Frost. Eric, good to see you here. He says, I'm going to give Spencer the benefit of the doubt. Eric, I saw you in the comment section. I believe I saw you after the Tony Racioppi interview, and you were inspired by the words of Tony Racioppi. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you were. So we'll see. I'm not giving up on Spencer Petras. I was very outspoken about the fact that I thought Iowa needed to go to the transfer portal during the offseason. They did not, but I do like Iowa's future personnel with guys like Labus, Linez, and then you have more your traditional quarterback in Carson May. I would be surprised if Petras takes an extra year and starts next year. I don't think that would go over real well with the fans, but if he plays well this year, then certainly that's up for discussion. Thank you, Kenneth. Appreciate you being here. ZJ, do you think having non-conference being the first game instead of a Big Ten game will help with more development? That's possible. But Iowa hasn't dropped a home opener since that 2020 season. And I think that's the only time they've dropped a home opener that was a Big Ten game. Now, last year they opened with Indiana, dominated, as we know. Indiana was a train wreck. But, yeah, I would rather start out with a FCS opponent, although South Dakota State's tricky. I think we're maybe people a bit too dismissive of South Dakota State. Lemansky, how much better can the defense be if the offense can have less 3 and outs? Chuck Long stated Kentucky won the Citrus Bowl due to defensive exhaustion. Well, Lemansky, good question. How much better can the defense be? It can be better if the defensive line gets better, can get a better pass rush, although the secondary, I don't know how the secondary can be much better. It was tremendous. Linebacker play is going to be really good again. I don't think there's a huge jump that defense can make. I don't think the ceiling is much higher than they were last year. But again, I do think it can be somewhat better. The offense can help the cause, though. You're right, with less 3 and outs, not pinning the defense back against its own end zone, against its own goal line. But yeah, it can be better. But it was really late last year. Eric, imagine being a 4 to 5 star quarterback being recruited and you find out the quarterback coach was a lineman, has 0 quarterback coaching experience. Well, it's fair point. I mean, I've said the same thing, Eric. Lemansky, little NIL money here so I contribute to the marketing juggernaut known as From the Hawkeye of the Storm. I didn't know I was a marketing juggernaut, but thank you for helping the cause, Lemansky. Appreciate that. Kenneth says, can the hospital next to Iowa football field do NIL, or is that part of Iowa football? Can they do NIL? You'll have to explain your question. Are you asking if they can contribute? Because, I mean, I don't think that's what you're asking, and I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, that's a university-run hospital, so I don't believe they'd be able to pay players. I mean, not above board, right? It's happening everywhere, but I don't believe so. Eric says, I wonder if Phil Parker ever has heated discussions with his offensive counterparts, given how good the defense is, yet gets crapped on by because of the pitiful time of possession. What's TOP? Eric says he did get more hope after the interview. Yeah, and I was encouraged by what Tony said about Petras' attitude, which didn't surprise me, how likable he is, but it has to be proven to me on the football field first. All right, if you were joining this show late, we've been on for almost 2 hours. We're wrapping it up here in a few minutes. But to recap, this is the latest surrounding Iowa's very active recruiting weekend. Making sure there's no breaking news while we're on here live. We've had some news. Let me run through that first. Iowa basketball offering 2024 4-star shooting guard Kur Teng. That news broke while we were on live. Also, wide receiver Jeron Tibbs, who was on campus this past weekend. He's a 6'4", 193-pound, 3-star wide receiver from Indianapolis for the 2023 class. He will be announcing his commitment on Twitter tomorrow at noon Eastern, 11 Central Time. And so I've got a meeting at 10 a.m. tomorrow, but I'll be tweeting something out. And if it's Iowa, we'll certainly be here to break it down. But he will be announcing tomorrow. Okay, the class that, or the group of kids that were on campus this weekend are as follows. According to Rivals, Kadyn Proctor, 5-star offensive tackle, standing at 6'7", 335 pounds. We know the storylines. He's trimmed his list down to Iowa and Alabama. He's taken visits to both, plenty of visits to Iowa. We're waiting a decision. Trevor Lauk, 4-star offensive tackle at 6'6", 287 from Indy. He has committed to Iowa. Kenneth Merriweather, heard that visit went well. He's a 6'3", 235-pound defensive end from Detroit. He will be announced, I think, soon. Nothing official there, but I think he will be. Linebacker and athlete Asa Newsome, 3-star, 6'4", 205-pound linebacker. I think he'll be a Hawkeye as well, if I had to guess, but no announcement from him. He was on campus. Logan Howland, teammate of Marco Lainez, 6'7", 280, a 3-star. He was on campus. Defensive end Kendrick Gilbert, a 6'5", 270-pound defensive end, 3-star recruit, was on campus. Chris Tarrick, a 6'6", 295-pound offensive tackle. He was on campus as well. Khalil Tate, a 6'1", 185-pound safety. He was on campus. Zach Ortworth, 6'5", tight end, was on campus. Jeron Tibbs, we mentioned, he'll be announcing tomorrow. He was here. Trevor Boer was on an official visit to Iowa. Defensive tackle at 6'4", 265. George Burhine, a 6'5", 215-pound tight end, was here. And then Jordan Allen, 6'4", 240-pound defensive end. If I missed anybody, please let me know in the chat or in the comments, comment section after this video is final. But that's the list. So a laundry list of guys, plus some guys that were already committed, including John Nestor and I believe David Kalker and Aiden Hall and Zach Lutmer. Those guys were recruiting. Leighton Jones was there as well. I believe Alex Moda was there. I believe Marco Lainez was there. I have not spoken with Marco, but I believe he was, according to what Rivals had out there. Don't quote me on that. But I believe Marco Lainez was there. Okay, and let me, one other thing I wanted to get to. So looking at what Iowa has in the 23 class and the 22 class combined, it's sort of interesting, even going back to the 21 class. So we talked about Iowa's uptick in recruiting, specifically along that offensive line. I do wonder, moving forward, will Iowa be able to keep all these offensive linemen if Proctor commits? Because if Proctor commits, you're going to be, this is what you're looking at. You've got from the 21 class, David Cobb, who's a 6'6", 295. This is out of high school. He's 6'6", 295. He's a tackle, right? He's a tackle. Now, he hasn't seen the field yet. My understanding is he was hurt last year. Connor Colby's playing inside at 6'5", 305. There's a difference between 6'5" and 6'6". Slight difference, right? 1 inch. But with those two guys, David Cobb, a natural tackle. Bo Stevens is 6'6", 295. I mean, my understanding is that he's a tackle. So there's two tackles that are basically, I think, locked into being tackles. Dunker's an interior offensive lineman. And then Myslinski's a center. So that's what you have in the 21 class. Then you have the 22 class. Let me pull up 22 here. And we mentioned Cale Crow from Huxley. So he, at a high school, was listed at 6'6", 265. And then Jack Dotzler, 6'7", 265. Those guys are tackles. So there's 4 guys who are surefire tackles. And then you look at 2023. And what does Iowa have in 23? They land a 6'9", 265-pound offensive tackle in Cannon Leonard. And a 6'6", 285-pound tackle in Trevor Lauk. So to me, if my math is right, that's 6 tackles that I think are guaranteed to be tackles. I don't, unless they move the defensive side of the ball, and maybe that's what will happen. Somebody will be moved because not everybody can play tackle, and Iowa doesn't love to rotate guys in at tackle. Typically, they did last year, I think more because of need. But if Proctor commits, then you're looking at a bunch of guys who are tackles, and that's not taking into account the young guys they have playing right now. Nick DeYoung, Mason Richmond, Jack Plum will be moving on. Perhaps that's why Iowa sees Connor Colby as a guard, because they've got so many guys who can play tackle moving forward. And that's a good problem to have. I just wonder at what point, like they've got Logan Howland is an offensive tackle who was teammates with Marco Lainez. He was on campus. He's 6'7", 280. Chris Tarrick is 6'6", 295. Those guys are tackles. You know, I'm no offensive line expert, but those guys are tackles, right? So, I mean, I don't know how somebody's not going to make it, right? Somebody's not going to play, is my point. So they're not going to be able to hold on to all these guys unless people switch to the defensive side of the ball. And Trevor Lauk is a 4-star kid. Proctor's a 5-star kid. David Cobb was 4-star. I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. I've been told that it's hard to switch offensive tackles who were real tall to tight end because of their feet, right? So I don't know, but that was my first question yesterday when 4-star tackle Trevor Lauk committed to Iowa football. I thought, okay, is this a sign that Kadyn Proctor is not coming? Not because I thought, well, Iowa took Lauk over Proctor, but did Lauk know something we didn't know? Right? Did Lauk have a reason to believe that Proctor is not going to commit, and that's why he committed? And I was told that's not true. I was told by somebody in the know that this does not hurt Iowa's. Shouldn't say it doesn't hurt Iowa's chances. This is not an indication that Proctor is a member of the Crimson Tide, that he's going to commit to Alabama. That doesn't necessarily mean he'll be a Hawkeye, but I was told that there's no correlation between the two. So potentially Iowa could have Cannon Leonard at 6'9", Trevor Lauk at 6'6", and Kadyn Proctor at 6'8", all in the same class, plus the guys that I just named off for the 21, 22 classes, 21, 22 classes. So I don't know. It's just a lot of big tackles, tall tackles. So we'll see what happens. Cole says, what do you think are the main problems with Nebraska? I'm assuming you're talking about on the field. Well, turnovers have been a bugaboo. I haven't looked at the numbers recently, Cole, but turnovers have been a bugaboo. I remember going into the last season and talking with Mark Rogers about Nebraska and the fact that they really were beating teams off the line, but they had dumb mistakes. I think about the snapping the football issues 2 years ago when Scott Frost complained about Iowa clapping and throwing off the Nebraska center. Like, those are those dumb mistakes, special teams gaffes. If I recall, they had a really dumb special teams gaffe week 0 against Illinois last year. If they can clean those things up, they'll be fine. But here's the deal, Cole. I do believe those things come down to coaching. And well-coached teams are sound and disciplined. That's why you see Iowa and Wisconsin and even Minnesota being pretty consistent year in and year out, because they have good coaching. So even when maybe you're not winning every battle in the trenches, and I think those teams typically do win those battles because they're well-coached as well. But even when they're not, Iowa hasn't been great on the offensive line. They still won 10 games last year. So they're really good defensively. They're really good on special teams. They don't turn the ball over, even though they had a quarterback that was just average, below average. That's what I would say, but I'm no Nebraska expert. Joseph says glass is half full, not half empty. I agree. I don't know if you're referring to my conversation about the tackles, but I'm not implying that it's a bad problem to have. I'm just saying somebody is not going to play. So we can get excited all we want. Somebody's not going to play a tackle. That's all I'm saying moving forward. But I don't think Proctor's going to be here more than 3 years if he comes. John brings up Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. Might need a stable job opportunity, implying that Iowa might get involved there. That would be quite the turning point. Okay. I don't see anybody. Last call. I'll give people one last opportunity at throwing a call in here, because it is 1 minute till 9. So the number is 515-635-1601. You see it on the bottom ticker there. If you want to donate to the show, donate to the channel. Appreciate the super chats this evening. If you want to donate, though, there is a link in the description below. You can also support our sponsors. That's much appreciated. If you can support our sponsors, that's awesome. But please donate to the channel in the description below if you so choose. And sponsor. If you want to sponsor the show, put that on the bottom line as well. From the Eye of the Storm at Outlook.com. Email me and we can talk. We can discuss levels of sponsorship and whatnot. Again, From the Eye of the Storm at Outlook.com. We're ramping up coverage, folks. So activity's only going to grow. Content's only going to get better. But we're here all off season. From the Eye of the Storm at Outlook.com. If you want to sponsor your small business or your big business, whatever the case may be, contact me. From the Eye of the Storm at Outlook.com. Please, if you have not already done so, hit the like button. That helps. Share the show out on social media. That helps as well. And want to let everybody know I'm here. Well, I'm not here. I'm with Mark Rogers, the voice of college football, every single Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. Every single Tuesday, 4:30 p.m., myself and the voice of college football, Mark Rogers. So if you've subscribed here, great. Thank you for that. Please hit the notification bell on your way out. But also head over to Iowa Football at the Voice of College Football. That's the YouTube channel, Iowa Football, the voice of college football, and subscribe there. All right. Because we have a great time every Tuesday at 4:30 talking Iowa football, and maybe we'll have some news. We'll have some news if Jeron Tibbs commits tomorrow. We'll see. We'll see where Jeron Tibbs ends up going, but he will be announcing tomorrow at noon. This show will be available by podcast, Spotify, Apple, Anchor, Google, all those podcast platforms. And I want to let everybody know we've got great content on the way. You'll want to stay tuned later this week for Brada's Branded Thoughts. The podcast will be available on our podcast platform and will also be available on YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Certainly subscribe here. But a great episode of Brada's Branded Thoughts is right around the corner, and a great guest. Appreciate everybody who's been on the show throughout the off season. It's been fun. It's been a fun time. This show has been fun as well, and I guarantee you this past weekend is going to pay more dividends. We got a commitment from Lauk. We're waiting on Proctor and a laundry list of other recruits. Thank you for being with me this evening. Subscribe here, and we will talk to you soon.